Techie Geek President Mike Bloomfield joins us as guest host this week as we break down news from ID Agent and ConnectWise, plus guest interviews with Greystone technology founder Peter Melby and IoT Playbook podcast host Mark Smith. It's ChannelPro Weekly, episode 143, The Right Hotdog. Hello and welcome to ChannelPro Weekly, episode 143. My name is Matt Whitlock, technology editor, online director, and your host of this fine program for you. And who are you? You are the VARs, you are the MSPs, you are the IT integrators, you are the IT resellers, you are the IT consultants. Are you catching a theme here? If you do technology with other businesses, you are probably in the right place. If you are a school nurse or a bank teller, you are probably not in the right place. There are exits here. But you should stick around and watch anyway because, hey, we're a lot of fun and you might learn a thing or two. Joining me each and every week, most of the time, is our fantastic executive editor, the man who makes, pretty much everything actually work around here, Rich Freeman.
I miss a week now and again when I'm traveling, but since nobody is traveling, I'm pretty consistent these days.
Yeah, you're probably like just pacing around, waiting, like I want something to do and waiting for the show to start. So you will be here now all the time.
Indeed.
Did you get your airline seats? Did they come in? Your plane seats?
No, haven't arrived yet. Can't wait.
So as most know, Rich does an enormous amount of traveling. So he's just not used to being home as much, and he's not used to working at a desk. He likes to work from the little airline seats in the tray table. So I think he was ordering one to put in his living room.
Yeah. It turns out there are all sorts of websites out there where you can order surplus plane seats, and I do half my writing on planes ordinarily. I figured I'll be more productive this way.
I like that idea, and what a conversation starter to have in your own house for when you're entertaining. Speaking of entertaining, we have a very, very entertaining guest host with us today. We are super excited to have him here on the show with us. He has the greatest title ever, too. Please welcome President Geek of Tekie Geek. Mike Bloomfield is here. Hi, Mike.
Hello, how are you?
It is the greatest title ever.
Thank you. And at least you got Bloomfield right. You know, most people call me Bloomberg, so I'm like, I wish I had his bank account. That would be great, but I'm always introduced as Mike Bloomberg, and then I'm like, what?
Yeah. Well, everybody, it's a big name, so, and they kind of overlap a little bit, but if you really were a Bloomberg, I would already be hitting you up for money.
So, Rich, when I come over, will I get first class?
Well, the one I have my eyes on is business class, so bigger than the usual coach seat.
You're not going for the first class, a little expensive?
Yeah, exactly. We all have to economize these days.
Yeah, and he's going to charge himself a ticket price every time he sits down, so it would get expensive after a while.
And you have to buy your own food, too. They don't even give you food anymore.
Yeah.
True that. So, Mike, thank you so much for being here. For those who are not familiar with you and with your company, Tekie Geek, tell us about you and that.
So we're based out of Staten Island, New York. So we are in the epicenter of the COVID crisis right now in the United States. We're not a suburb. We are one of the 5 boroughs in New York City, considered the suburb. I'm a president geek at Tekie Geek, so we're a managed IT service provider. We've been around for 7 years now. We're a little different than other MSPs. We go into different areas. So we're the typical standard IT service provider for business to business, but we also do managed IoT, home theater design, more of that CE Pro concept, so the consumer electronics. And to be honest with you, I completely do that for selfish needs, because on the business to business, when you install a server at someone's house, or at someone's business, no one ever thanks you. It's never, hey, great job. It's really great. My employees are efficient. You get yelled at when things don't work, but you never get thanked. On the home side, when you build a theater for someone and you sit down the homeowner and you put them in and you put on that first movie for them, you finally get a smile and a thanks. So I selfishly do it just so I feel appreciated once in a while.
So, Mike, it's funny. We actually have a lot in common because a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, not where Baby Yoda lives, because I saw Baby Yoda sitting behind you. I also did home theater sales and installation for quite a while. Big stuff. So you have a kindred spirit. It's a lot of fun, home theater.
It's so fun. It's so exciting when I've had it happen a number of times, and it's the best feeling when they go, I hired you because I thought you would do a good job. This blows my mind, and my expectations are and that's like when you hear that and the smile, and the wife comes down who was against it the whole time and sits down and goes, okay, this is fun. You know, it's great. I love doing it. And I miss doing it because that is the one area of my business that is completely stopped.
So you do obviously more than home theater installs. You do managed services, and you're getting into IoT, which we're going to talk a little bit about later. Tell us about how you're surviving right now. How the COVID-19 situation is impacting you and your business, and how you're approaching things.
So look, we are fortunately like the healthcare industry, right? We are needed more now than ever. We're not keeping people alive. Thank you, God, and thank you to those first responders, healthcare workers. Everything they are doing on the front line is absolutely amazing. But people need us, and we're keeping businesses running. And in the first part of this, the first week, 2 weeks, we got pretty much about, if I pulled the numbers, 96% of our client base working remote. So we've made the ability, and we had in business continuity plans in place for remote workforce, distributed workforce in the event of a disaster. I'm going to be 100% honest with you. I never planned for a pandemic, right? We've all been planning for another Hurricane Sandy, a fire, a flood. I never thought that we would put these in place to stay at home order from a pandemic. But luckily we had these processes in place and we got that. So we have two different teams. I have my IT side help desk that sits in our office. Those are the guys who do my B2B, managed IT services, the IoT side of things in terms of monitoring. And then I have my installers. Fortunately, I've kept my staff, my full staff hired and paid. However, my field techs haven't been doing work. So here and there, I'll send them on emergency jobs, but there's not much we could do right now, but I'm paying them, right? So I got very lucky that I had that, and proud to report that I was funded today for my PPP loan. So that was awesome. That was a good plus. But definitely things have changed. Went to the distributed workforce ourselves. We're considered essential in New York, but why would I put my employees at risk, and and for a continuity point of view, why would I put all of my techs in one space? If one of us gets sick, and how contagious this is, and we all get sick at the same time, how am I supposed to service our clients? So I actually took us to a distributed workforce about a week prior to the mandated stay-at-home order. As soon as I saw this was going, I broke us all up. Luckily, due to company culture, so we're fun. I like to say I'm fun. I might not be fun. You ask my employees, they might tell you I'm not that good. But we have arcades in the office. I got Baby Yoda behind me. We have toys all over the office. People come to my office. They're like, is this an office or is this like a kid's playroom? It's pretty much like a play. It's my hangout. But by us going to remote workforce, we've been able to be successful by keeping company culture. We still get together in team meetings and Slack and different things just on video, not to talk about work. We come up and I go, all right, what's for lunch? What are we doing for lunch? Because on a normal day, I get into the office and the first question I ask everybody is, what are we ordering for lunch today? So it's keeping it fun, keeping it exciting, and making it feel like some normalcy. And that's definitely helped to keep my tech sane, myself sane, and keep things going and productive. We're handling tickets. We're maintaining everything we need to infrastructure. I have my one field tech, like I said, going out for emergency visits only after I could guarantee from my client that social distancing rules are being in place. No one will come within 6 to 10 feet of him. He's able to get in and do what he needs. Luckily, I have him with wipes, masks, and all the proper PPE to protect him. And I only ask them to do it if they're comfortable. And the first thing I told them is, if you get on a job site and there's any reason you feel uncomfortable, walk off. Call me. Never going to be upset with you. The last thing I want is for you to get sick. But luckily, we haven't got to that point.
One of the things I was interested to get into with you. So we have this occasional sort of ongoing series of partner profiles we're running at ChannelPro now that we're calling From the Coronavirus Trenches. And it's just basically reports on what people like yourself are doing right now, doing differently, you know, the challenges you're running into. The idea was to kind of look for some best practices other people might be able to draw from. So we did one of those about you, and that was, I was looking at it earlier today, that came out about a month ago. And you were mostly talking, I mean, that was really crunch time, right? That was very early on in all these stay-at-home orders, and everybody out there had customers who suddenly couldn't get into the office. How do we connect them? RDP, VPN. So that was mad scramble time. So it's been about a month since then, and I'm just sort of curious, how have things evolved in that month? I mean, does it feel like you're more or less back to business as usual, except that your employees are scattered around? Or are you supporting customers in different ways now?
So business as usual, in the sense that, yeah, so that was probably 5 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago. That first week and a half, you know, was really people trying to stay, not going to remote, right? You know, so a lot of conversations, if we want to go remote, we can enact the plan we have in place. Yes, it's a flip of a switch. We could get you going. It was a lot of conversations and people really trying to hold out, right? And rightfully so. I understand why not all businesses were as proactive as me, right? Who wants to just get up and send your employees away? We were destroyed that first week and a half, and my staff was working late, doing whatever they need, because as the calls, and it was eventually everyone came at once. After that, it's back to kind of being business as usual. We're handling the normal ticket load. Luckily, like I said, 96% of our clients, if I look at the numbers, are remote. I have a couple of hospitality restaurants and such that, unfortunately, gyms that basically had no choice, but they closed and chose not to go to the takeout delivery method. It was just better for them to close. So we're handling the normal ticket load. It's giving us a great chance to focus on our business as well. So we actually made a migration, a switch over from PSA and RMM during this process that was on the books anyway, but it ended up being great. You know, we did it about 2 weeks ago, so normal ticket load, but also with us being home and stuff, we were able to get that handled and get that done. And we are fully switched over. We're now in the process of moving our documentation system over. But things have definitely changed, though, in sense of what I do on a day-to-day basis. On a normal day-to-day basis, when things are normal, I'm kind of mixed from out of the office and in the office. I'm very big into networking. I'm very big into networking groups, being at conferences, meeting people. Where we are, you could market, but that doesn't mean anything. It's all referral. It's who you know. So I have to be out there. So that was ripped away from me, right? And not just from me, from everybody. So I came up with this concept, I think four and a half weeks ago, pretty much the first day of the stay-at-home order. I'm going to do Facebook Live. And next thing I know, now we do 3 shows a day. We have a 10 a.m. show called Breakfast with Bloomy. We have a midday show called Midday with Moss. We have a 10 p.m. show called Gotham After Dark. And it's me and 2 co-hosts from 2 other businesses, one doing entertainment business. And they're completely closed down. There's nothing they could do. And the other one being a video production company. So we have guests on, we have business owners on, we talk, we banter. So I'm trying to become a celebrity. We were actually highlighting on Fox 5 News here in New York about 3 weeks ago. So I did that as a way to stay relevant and to keep in front of my clients. And we don't talk IT. It's not a daily show where I talk about cybersecurity. I could probably tell you at this point, I think we've done 50-something shows between the 3 shows. I've maybe talked tech on 2 or 3 of them. That's not what it's there for. It's not for me to be there and talk tech and bore people. It's for us to have a good time. It keeps us normal. But my Facebook reach has been incredible. In the past 28 days, I've reached over 60,000 people on Facebook. We're getting tremendous views on the videos, a lot of engagement, commenting through, a lot of new friends, likes on the Facebook page. But I'm also having sidebar conversations with business owners who love watching the footage and the videos and talk about, okay, great, I can't wait till we get back to normalcy. When I'm back in my office, I want you to come and take a look at some things. I want to see how we could use you going forward. So just indirect, without me even selling to them, I will get business on the other side of this from doing this. And again, a lot of what I do is selfish. It gives me normalcy. The day goes quick. I'm not sitting in my house twiddling my thumbs, doing what I need to do. The day goes quick. I look forward to going on.
You know, it's an interesting example of this big question I think a lot of people are asking now. So, I mean, millions and millions of people were forced into remote work and work from home. They didn't really have a choice in the matter. And a lot of those people, you know, were sort of opposed to the idea of allowing employees to work from home. There's no way they're going to be as productive. And yet now everyone is kind of discovering, actually, this works pretty well. And so there's this whole question about how, you know, the business world looks different, runs differently after we have access to offices again. I mean, what has sort of permanently changed? And I was thinking about that as you were talking before. I mean, your model in the past was very face-to-face and making speaking appearances and so on. And you found in the last month or so that you, in some ways, have a bigger reach if you're doing some of that same kind of outreach virtually, you know, online. I mean, can you see your kind of approach to business development changing in a permanent way, even when you can get out in front of people face to face again?
So I think everything is going to be changed after this. And I think there's going to be changes in personal life, business, how networking is done. So do I see a change? Yes. Do I see how I do business development? I think so. You know, we've already spoken, the group of us. Are we going to do daily shows? No. Eventually, when we get on the other side of this, I got to get back to actually doing work. But we've already spoken about doing 1 or 2 shows a week consistently. And it's great content. It's a great way to be out there. And we're talking about doing a show where we go out and actually go to restaurants one week, and we pick a new restaurant. We sit there and we sit with the business owner. And so where we will be together, but it'll still be using Facebook Live, YouTube Live as the medium. I think there's going to be it's going to be a long time before I think we see large groups of people in conferences. So I think there's going to be a lot of conferences that are going to go virtual. Webinars are super easy to put together for business owners. So I think I'm going to definitely try to do more webinars. That was one thing I never really did. I like to kind of get people in a room, sit them down, serve them lunch, and get that face-to-face. But I think I'm going to try doing webinars. And guess what? I could do, if I hire right, I could probably do 1 webinar a week, 1 every other week. And it costs far less than every time I try to get someone in a room. You know, if I do a lunch and learn, it typically costs me anywhere from $2,000 to $3,000 by the time everything's said and done. You're paying for lunch, cocktails, giveaways, and everything. A webinar, what does it cost you other than some time? So I definitely do think things are going to change.
Well, awesome stuff. Again, thank you so much, Mike, for being here. And I know we'll be talking to you throughout the show and learning a little bit more about your business and how you're responding to this and getting your take on, well, all kinds of stuff. In fact, we've got lots more to come. So we've got a couple news stories we're going to break down today. ID Agent is in the news, as well as ConnectWise. We're going to talk about those stories, and we'll get your take on those. We also have another interview coming up with Peter Melby from Greystone Technology. We're going to talk to him in just a few minutes. And of course, you know, I've got a museum pick, a tech pick. We've got lots to go with, and another. Oh, sorry, this is a double-decker interview day today, Rich. We will also have an interview later on with Mark Smith, host of the IoTPlaybook.com podcast. So this is a jam-packed show, and we better get rolling right along, or it's not going to end until 9 p.m. So we're going to start first with our first interview of the day. We have joining us now is the founder of Greystone Technology, Peter Melby. Welcome, Peter.
How are you?
I'm very, very well, thank you, and thank you so much for being here with us today.
Absolutely.
For those not familiar with Greystone Technology and you, can you tell us a little bit about you?
Yeah, so Greystone Technology is an MSP based in Denver, Colorado. We have been around for almost 20 years. We call ourselves a people-focused MSP, which is a little bit redundant in the sense that I think whether people realize it or not, all MSPs, I mean, the MSP industry is a people industry. You know, we deal with technology, but ultimately it comes down to the people who use the technology and the people who are serving those people. And So that's been our mantra over the years, and we've grown pretty organically. We've got almost 100 team members now between Denver and regional Colorado, and then a security focus out on the East Coast as well.
So you are up in the mountains in Denver, Colorado. What is the atmosphere up there like with the whole COVID thing? Everybody's still sheltering down, and
so what's funny is that Denver's actually not in the mountains. It's right next to the mountains. Most Colorado cities, with where everybody lives, are right are just up and down what's called the Front Range, which if you look to your right is a lot like Kansas, and if you look to your left is a lot like the pictures that you see on TV of Colorado. So it's actually pretty flat, and it's like most places. I mean, we've definitely been hit by it. We currently are under a stay-at-home order. They're doing some very, very small relaxation of that starting this weekend, where I think little things like we can get haircuts again if we want to, and so there's definitely some signs of that, but just like everywhere else, we're all pretty cautious. So, and our office, for example, is going to remain closed through May. I mean, we'll definitely be doing more client site visits as more of those companies open up, but our focus still is just on being remote as much as we can.
Yeah. Well, I should point out that Peter's a longtime friend of ours here at ChannelPro. He's spoken at our events before. He's been on the cover of the magazine before, so we've known Peter for a long time. And the main reason I invited him to join us on the show this week is I got an email from him earlier this week, 2-3 days ago, about an initiative that he and some colleagues of his have put together that I just thought was really interesting and really timely. And this is what you guys are calling the MSP Stimulus Pledge. It has to do with some commitments that you are all making in terms of what you will do with federal stimulus dollars if and when those become available to you. So why don't you tell folks a little bit about what that pledge is and how this came about?
Yeah, so it's really just the grassroots result of some conversations. I think a lot of MSP owners are talking to each other more now than they have in the past, because we're all comparing notes about what's happening in various areas, about what support we might get, what we're seeing happening with clients in different regions. So I feel like the camaraderie between MSP owners has really never been higher. And what we were talking about with amongst a group of peers is the idea that we're thankful that the government stimulus has incentivized us and encouraged us to continue to employ our teams. One of the early drafts of a stimulus bill was really just focused on great unemployment benefits for everybody, which would have incentivized us to reduce our staff if we saw a reduction in revenue or any kind of an uncertain future. And so we're really thankful that through the PPP program, which has been a nightmare to navigate, for a lot of people, that the intent is to support us in keeping our staff. Now, there are many ways to use those funds, and a lot of different values that will come into play. But what we found is that we had shared values with a lot of with a lot of organizations in this industry, but they're not necessarily values that other people recognize, or see. And the public display of asking MSP peers to take the MSP Stimulus Pledge, which basically states that you will, with to whatever economic extent possible, for the next few months during this pandemic, we'll avoid layoffs. We will not increase compensation of owners. We will pay our bills on time, and we will be managing our companies with the idea that the entire business landscape needs us to be strong going into what is probably going to be a pretty brutal recession. And well-run MSPs can do fantastic things during those places. People who look at it and say, "Oh, great! I just got a bunch of free money from the government." Are going to have a rude awakening. And so we felt like it was important for us to make a public statement in the industry and then from the industry to the companies out in the general business market to say, we are using this as intended. We are using this to move our economy forward. We're all going to be paying for this stimulus for a long time. And it's important to us that we come together and we're stewards of it in a way that will lessen the impact. A stronger economy will allow it, a quicker recovery and to make up for this stimulus investment quicker. And so it's at its core unashamed, like it's an attention-getting thing. But it's an attention-getting thing about things that we're very much doing, that we want our teams to understand, that we want the companies that use our services to understand, and that we want people to look at the MSP industry in general and realize how relevant we can be and how supportive of businesses and people we can be.
Now it's called the MSP Stimulus Pledge. If I remember right, there were about 15 companies that signed it when you first started publicizing this. I was visiting the site earlier today, and that number has already just in the past few days grown. I mean, you are encouraging your peers in the industry, other MSPs out there, to sign the pledge, correct?
Correct. Absolutely. We would love people to join with us, in this statement of values. I think someone asked me yesterday, they said, what does success look like for this? And I said, we've already reached success. We wanted to get information out to people in a way that they would look at it and understand what we're doing, that our teams would see it and be really proud with the idea about the idea that they work for a company that is supporting them, that is looking at the bigger picture, not just the bottom line. And so we're excited just to see the number of MSPs that have looked at it and said, oh, that's a great idea. I know of probably 10 to 20 that are waiting to get confirmation that they will get funding in order to jump on the bandwagon. But it's also not something that we're investing a lot of time in. It was a pretty simple just statement of, this is what we're doing. We'd like other people to join us. The more momentum that we get, the greater the show it is for our industry. And probably the coolest thing is that many of the earlier early participants are our direct competitors in Colorado. And so, if you look at the list, our key competitors are on that list, and we've had some really great communication with each of them, and about the fact that some of these things are bigger than competition. There's room. We've long, held respect for each other, but we can look at it and realize that the more that we show up in Denver as an industry that supports its people and is relevant to the businesses that we serve, coming out of this, I can't imagine that it's going to be extremely cost effective to be staffing your own IT departments too far into the future. So I think that we're all in line, to benefit from that. So I won't say that it's all altruistic, or that it's just an aw shucks type thing. And we definitely want people to see this. We want people to see us for what we are, as a group of companies with a great focus who are poised to do great things.
Yeah, and to the point about some of your competitors being on the pledge, I'll just quickly point out that when I was looking at that list, I immediately saw Anchor Network Solutions, which is Vince Tinarello's company. Vince was a guest host on this podcast just a few weeks ago, and you guys are both in Denver. You both collaborated on this together. Before I forget, because I don't think we've said it yet, what is the URL for this pledge?
Yeah, it's mspstimuluspledge.com. It took it took about 6 seconds to come up with that name, and the URL was available. There's very little creativity in that, but we definitely, as I talked to Vince and others, obviously didn't want to push people to the Greystone site. That was something where Vince said, "Yeah, I'm in as long as I have to send my clients to look at something on your website," and which is funny. So funny story about Vince. We've coexisted in the Denver market for over a decade, but I met Vince for the first time at a ChannelPro event that we both spoke at.
I remember that.
Like a double booking, and we got there, and I still remember you are like, oh no, and Vince and I both looked at each other like, we know of each other. We've never met, but we're fine with this. It's going to be great. And we sat, in the hotel bar and had drinks, and just caught up on all things Denver, MSP world. And Vince and I went and we went a week before all this started. We sat down and had drinks and just talked through, how each of our businesses were doing and things like that. So we did collaborate on this. We did, go back and forth, but that's not new for us. We have a great relationship.
That's great to hear. I distinctly remember, and it's just the kind of thing that I should be aware of, and sometimes I'm not. Vince came up to me at that show and he said, you realize that guy, you have me on stage sharing my secret sauce with a guy who's in my market. It's like, yeah. Probably should have thought of that. So I'm glad that worked out for everybody.
Yeah.
And Peter, I just signed the pledge.
I just saw it come in. So if you heard the little ding, that's awesome. Thank you. Mm-hmm. Very cool.
One of the interesting things, so there are a number of different commitments in the pledge, and the number one on the list is, these are dollars that are meant to keep people employed and the economy flowing, and so we pledge that we're going to the extent possible, avoid layoffs and pay cuts. But there are some other things on there too that I think are, important parts of doing business ethically these days, and one of them on there was essentially you said that anyone who signs this pledge will not go to their vendors and ask for help just because they can. It's like, if you need help, go ahead and ask for help, but don't take advantage of vendors right now because there are other people getting assistance.
Right. Yeah. The vendor relationships are always a tricky one. I think that in this space, there are some vendors who have room to really support MSPs and need to be doing that. I wholeheartedly believe that. I think that there's a lot of private equity money in the vendor space. There's, and I'm not going to, I can't dictate how each of them runs their business. But what I don't like is the idea of we're just all going to ask for discounts, and demand discounts just because. And it's actually less of a vendor relationship thing to me and more of a, if we look at what the economy needs right now, it needs spending. And the stimulus is designed to mimic a healthy economy as best as possible, which is an impossible thing to do. So in a perfect world, the government, infuses the money that we need in order to keep, spending and consumption levels at what they were before all of this happens. It's never going to be that even. It's never going to be that clean. But I think that my charge to the vendors would be, make sure that you're supporting MSPs to whatever extent you can, because every vendor has a different financial profile. But I don't like the idea of just going short paying everybody, or saying I'm not going to pay you because because I don't have to, because it's excusable right now. I'm not going to pay my rent because it's easy to look at it and say that no one else is paying their rent, so why should I? And so I look at that from the standpoint of, let's be good citizens in this. Let's, but for example, we have clients that are shut down, and we have agreed to pause some contracts. And we don't want to go uninstall all of the tools that we use on those and then have to spend all the labor to reinstall those tools, potentially either eating that cost or charging the customer. And so that is something specifically that we are going to our vendors and saying, hey, can we partner in this? Can you help us out with this? We give you a lot of money. We give them, we pay their bills. So we shouldn't withhold money from them just ad hoc, but we should work and partner with them in those situations where relief is possible, relief is necessary. And I love seeing the vendors that are being proactive about what relief is possible as well, because it puts us in a position where we can be partners and not at odds.
Yeah, I want to get Mike's take on the pledges. You said you just signed it. How important, Mike, is it to have something like this in a time like now for MSPs to look at as kind of like a guideline, an ethical standard, if you will, on operating in this current kind of condition?
No, I think it's a great idea. I love the ability to. I think it was a great pledge. As you brought it up, I went on the site. I read through the guidelines and what we're stating, and I agree with every one of them. I think it's crazy that MSPs are the first ones when you look at it who complain about contract length with vendors. No one wants to sign a 3-year deal with ConnectWise, but we're the first people that go and ask for a 3-year deal with our clients. So, and you see that all the time, and you see that on the on Facebook forums with IT owners. And exactly what Peter's saying is, I think a lot of these owners were taking that as stimulus money and not realizing there's a reason the stimulus money is going to you. It's keep your employees staffed. And that's one thing I spoke about is I kept my employees staffed, and luckily my help desk, there was still a need for them, but my field technicians, I kept them staffed, even though I wasn't making any money on them because I felt it was the right thing to do for my employees. I like to always say, my employees don't work for me. I work for my employees. And the same thing with the vendors. Just don't go. I haven't went to my vendors and said, hey, can I pause billing? Because I don't want my clients to come to me and just pause billing because of where we are. Yes, I have a couple of contracts that are businesses that are closed and we've come up, but if I'm providing a service and your business is up and running, why should I just pause pause billing just because, hey, well, everyone else is doing it? The one thing that I think that vendors can help with, and I would rather them influx money into, is give us MDF funds. Give us funds that we could use to drive our business up. So use it as a stimulus package if it's the ConnectWise of the world, the Kaseya's, because now by you investing in my business, you're showing you're a partner and you're helping to grow our business. And what happens when our business grows, we get more endpoints and more business. So you're going to ultimately grow. And that's one thing that I always say, and where I consider Datto an amazing partner. I don't consider Datto a vendor. I consider them a partner because they are always investing in my business. They're always giving money. They give you that quarterly ability and ability to get MDF funds, and they see the return. And I would love to see more vendors do that now who may not have previously done that.
I think that's a good point, and I think it's also worth pointing out that I don't see the business landscape between MSPs and vendors as even, or even on the same planet. Most, if we look at the large vendors, that are PE backed, that are focused on, on so many they're billion-dollar companies. Most MSPs were started by a person, a technician, bootstrapped, things like that. And so I think it's important to realize that in some ways we're beholden to the vendors because they do provide a lot of the stability that we use to run our businesses. But I think also recognizing that if we look at the haves and the have-nots when it comes to liquid assets going into something like this, most large-scale vendors, not all of them, most large-scale vendors have the resources necessary to make it through this, and to be, and the support that they need. No one's, you don't have a major vendor founder who's worried about how to feed their kids right now. So I think that's another piece of it, is that when I say the just because, in that pledge, I do believe that the vendors should be taking on a lion's share of what support is needed during this time. But let's not forget that the government's doing a lot of that too. So, I don't want it to be, to seem like we should really, just be nice to the vendors, because otherwise they won't know what to do, if we're not, paying full price for everything. But I do think that there is a strong business case for making sure that we're not just demanding things because we can, but have a good business case behind it.
Yeah, very true. So I want to ask one last question, because I'm kind of curious, and it's kind of maybe a funny question to ask, but it's a good one. This is obviously a pledge. Somebody saying, "Hey, I'm going to do what this says," but I'm sure it's not enforceable. But what are you going to do if word gets back to you that somebody signed this pledge and then didn't do any of the things that they said that they were going to do? Are you going to smear them somehow? What's the plan?
Honestly, our investment in this is relatively small and will continue to be relatively small. We've got a large business, I mean, a relatively large scale MSP to operate during a time of crisis, and that's where our focus is going. So no, I am, and at the same time, I give a talk, at a lot of conferences called Boss or Babysitter, about how to avoid babysitting staff and things like that. I'm a big fan of developing foundations, of trust and all of that. So no, I think that honestly, it's public enough that one of the key audiences is our own teams. And so if we're not living up to these values, like that's going to hurt more than anything else, is if our teams don't have that trust in us. That's far more important than whatever someone on LinkedIn says about your company. So no, I think that there will also be companies who come out of this. One of the things that I think is so great about the position that we're in is that we're given support to get through a temporary situation. But we're going to come out of it, like I said, into a pretty severe recession, it looks like. And we're all going to need to run our companies in a way that is fiscally responsible. So I think people will come out of this and realize that this can't be a promise forever because we don't know what's going to come down the line. This is allowing us space. The fact that right now I don't have to worry about. I mean, I can make this pledge to my team. Hey, we're not making any cuts. During this temporary situation. The amount of attention now that I can put towards rapid innovation, so to make sure that we find new ways to deliver value to the market sooner, means that I have a much better chance of continuing to employ my team and more going forward, even in the midst of a recession. If we didn't have that right now, all MSP owners would be spending 3/4 of their day doing math and figuring out what they can survive with, how many people they can afford to get rid of in order to position ourselves well for the future. The fact that we don't have to do that truly is a gift, and I think that the more that we can focus on that and not just the specifics of who's following everything to a T and who's not. That's not what it's about. It's about moving forward in a way that I expect my company to be larger. I mean, to still grow this year. That's not a guarantee, but we're going to work like hell to make it happen. Not just my partner and I, but our entire team, of 93 people is going to be working on that because we're all in this together.
That is great. And just to plant the seed, though, if you do find out if somebody kind of breaks the rules here, I encourage flying a blimp around their company or their area with a big sign on it that says "Liar, liar, pants on fire."
Yeah, use your stimulus funds for that. That's a great use. That's a great way to stimulate the economy. I'm sure that there are some blimp flyers that are out of business right now.
Give me a call. Give me a call. I know a guy.
we got to support our local blimp operators.
Love it. Yeah.
Right. Thank you, Peter Melby. The website is mspstimuluspledge.com. Peter, for those who want to learn more about your company, Greystone Technology, where can they go?
Greystonetech.com.
Fantastic.
Yep. GREYSTONETECH. And yeah, thanks for having me. It's great to be in touch with you all, and I look forward to more.
And if someone wants to reach out to you directly, have questions for you, do you have an email address or a social profile?
Get me on LinkedIn. That's probably the easiest way. So I do check that. Connect with me, send me a message, and we'll go from there.
Fantastic. Again, thank you so much, Peter, for being on. We'll hopefully have you back again down the road.
Sounds good. Thanks, guys. Bye.
Bye now. All right. Well, we've got a lot more to talk about today. We got some news. We got another interview coming up with Mark Smith and a whole bunch more. So, Mike, Rich, why don't we go ahead and dive right into the couple news stories we have? Obviously, right now, there's not a ton of news out there, but there is a little bit here and there. So, Rich, ID Agent is in the news this week. Why don't you tell us about that?
Yeah, so interesting story in a number of different ways. So let's just kind of take it at the simplest level here. ID Agent has a new solution that they officially introduced this week. It is an identity and access management product. Now, ID Agent is well known in the channel these days. They started out, really in a lot of ways, they sort of pioneered dark web monitoring as a managed service. So they've been doing that for a while. For a little bit less, they've also been doing security awareness training. This is sort of a major addition to their lineup of products. It's a product called Passly. And Passly it's a combination two-factor authentication, password management, and single sign-on solution all in one integrated bucket. And it draws on some of that dark web data that ID Agent has as well, and just in terms of allowing users to get a look at least right now, and we'll talk a bit, this is going to evolve over time, but right now, in addition to those three core functions I was describing, you can get a look at how many users in a particular domain across all the domains you support have been found, have had stolen credentials show up on the dark web. So it's like a 3-4-in-1 kind of bundle of products. And at ID Agent, they're calling this, a core element of their digital risk platform. So they look at, combining Dark Web ID, which is their dark web monitoring product, with Bullfish ID, which is their security awareness product, with Passly. You put those together, and basically you're ensuring that your people are trained, you're ensuring that their credentials aren't showing up online, you're ensuring that they're connecting with the web in a secure way, and it all kind of bundles together. So all of that just on its own is interesting. What's interesting about this as well is what it kind of shows us about the evolution of things at Kaseya. So ID Agent was acquired by Kaseya roughly a year ago, I guess 11 months ago at this point. ID Agent was one of several acquisitions by Kaseya: Rapid Fire Tools, Spanning, which is a cloud-to-cloud backup company, IT Glue. So Kaseya has been assembling this sort of family of brands and looking for ways to sort of cross-fertilize products across these different brands, and also to create sort of a platform that unifies those brands. So from a Kaseya standpoint, the long-term strategy obviously is they want as many MSPs as possible using all of their different products. And so they have what they call their IT Complete platform, which kind of unifies together all of these different tools that they've acquired. And that's what they're encouraging people to investigate and adopt. But they're also quite happy to do business with people, business unit by business unit. Rapid Fire Tools continues to have its own presence in the industry. Same with ID Agent, same with Unitrends, IT Glue, et cetera. In this particular case, one of the companies that Kaseya has owned since 2014, or at least the product from this company, was called Auth Anvil, A-U-T-H Anvil, and that was an identity and access management product. Did a lot of what Passly can do today. And so what happened here basically is Kaseya took Auth Anvil and they handed that to ID Agent, because ID Agent had an opportunity to build a more expansive security platform this way. And they essentially turned Auth Anvil into an ID Agent product. Now, there's something like 100,000 Auth Anvil partners out there. Nobody's turning off the lights on those folks at all, really, right now, or in any abrupt kind of way. So the Auth Anvil product that all those people are using is still out there. It's still available. It's still running. There's sort of a plan to slowly, in a non-disruptive way, transition those folks over to Passly. But it's just sort of an interesting example of the ways in which Kaseya is sort of thinking through, rethinking how it utilizes all of these different brands and all of these different tools it has to both strengthen those companies individually, so that doing business with an ID Agent, for example, individually now it has more value because they have more integrated products to offer you, but also to kind of pull some of those assets together into platforms like this digital risk protection platform that ID Agent is building. So interesting story in terms of Kaseya, and just an interesting product for MSPs to take a look at.
And I have a funny story with that, because as I mentioned, we switched to Kaseya and we're using the Auth Anvil and we're using the single sign-on of it. So sometime last week, went to our Auth Anvil site and I'm like, Passly, what's this? Why are they showing me the wrong logo? Like, I have another company's logo, and I went on the internet and searched Passly and found like an article on how they're rebranding. I was like, oh, okay, I guess they rebranded. But yeah, so all of a sudden we just went to the single sign-on page and they just rebranded it.
It's funny because I had the exact same experience an hour or two before I did the interview for the story. I just wanted to see how Passly compares to AuthAnvil. And so I went to authanvil.com and it immediately redirected me to Passly. And I was like, well, there's your answer. It is AuthAnvil.
You know, it straight up, and it looks the exact same, like for now on the AuthAnvil side, except they've changed, I think, some coloring. They've changed it to, I think the Passly's more like the blue tones now, where AuthAnvil, I think, was like the green tones, and the logo changed. And just no warning. I was like, okay. And I was just curious. I was like, at first, I just thought they were accidentally giving me the wrong logo for my business. Because, you know, they brand the single sign. I was like, oh, what happened here?
Just
yeah, interesting. So Mike, you're intimately familiar with this product then. So you know what AuthAnvil does. Are you excited about the direction that they're talking about taking it, or what are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, no, look, I think it's exciting. Like I've mentioned, I've only been with Kaseya now for a few weeks. So far, I really like it. There's a lot of really good things in the whole suite. So we were previously using rapid fire tools for years now. We've probably been using that for 3 or 4 years. We started using ID Agent probably 6 months ago, and we use ID Agent paired with Breach Secure now. I think they're both great platforms, and I felt I wanted to do both. What I was seeing is when I was going against competitors of mine, if I was giving a Breach Secure now and they were using ID Agent, there were different breaches being found. So I said, you know what? Let me just show them everything. Well, I don't want to have less than my competitor. So I want to make sure I have the most complete picture. I've been very happy with the ID Agent. And then Kaseya, I've been dealing with a bunch of their salespeople, and Frank Tessalano, he's a great guy. He actually lives on Staten Island and knows my father-in-law, and he's like one of the heads of sales there. And he came to a meeting, he did a demo with us, and my tech sat down and really liked the demo. We were at the end of our ConnectWise contract, and we made the decision to switch, and very happy so far. My techs are happy. We find it. There's certain things I wish it did, but it's always greener on the other side. I don't think there's one single PSA RMM tool that does everything right, but they do a lot of great things. And I think collectively, how they're building these cores and these foundations, I think it's a great move for them. And, you know, so I'm excited to see where it's going to go.
Very cool. Now, Rich, can you tell us a little bit about the pricing for Passly? Is it different than AuthAnvil, or how are they positioning that?
Yeah, is it cheaper? I want to know.
Well, I mean, what I know about the pricing model, I don't know specific prices, but there are two things that the ID Agent folks certainly emphasized when you discuss this with them. And one is that they modeled the rate scheme after the rate scheme that debuted with the dark web ID product, which is sort of a fixed cost, very predictable kind of model where you know you're buying X amount of usage, and you can budget for that accordingly. So with this product, you can buy it in 20, 40, or 60 organization buckets for a fixed cost monthly kind of price. Now, in terms of how the pricing compares elsewhere, again, I don't have the specific prices, so it's a little hard for me to say, but ID Agent says, you know, if you go out, so depending on quantities and so on, it sounds like a good baseline kind of figure to measure from is something like $1 per user per month. In a larger volume order, that could go all the way down to 50 cents per user per month. So, I mean, not terribly expensive. And they point out that, you know, if you go out and you buy a two-factor authentication product, and you buy a single sign-on product from somebody else and a password management product from a third company, you're probably going to wind up paying significantly more than getting all of that in this one 50 cents to $1 per user per month kind of bundle. And they're saying you could, you know, be saving as much as 90% off of what you would pay by buying all that stuff separately. So it's certainly, you know, designed to be affordably priced.
Very, very cool. All right. Well, we are going to move on to our next story, and the name was brought up a few minutes ago, as even though Mr. Mike is transitioning away from ConnectWise, they are still optimistic, though, despite some tough times ahead. Rich, tell us about
Some days back, I got I was contacted by the PR folks at ConnectWise, and they wanted to know if I'd be interested in doing an interview with Jason McGee, the CEO over there, and Steve Cochran, who's the CTO now. And needless to say, I said, yes, thank you. That sounds excellent. And, you know, they told me they basically just wanted to kind of fill me in on the company's strategy for dealing with this crisis that we're in right now. And truth be told, you get an invitation like that, you know, in my position, you absolutely accept it. But there's a part of you that's thinking I might be in for some spin here, you know. But this was actually a really frank, honest, interesting conversation that I had with both those guys, just kind of filling me in on what they're doing and what's changing over there. So they have been sort of thinking about strategically what they need to do to weather the storm that all of us are getting through right now. And since as far back as February, they actually have, right now they've got 2,400 employees around the world at 16 offices. And one of those offices is here in Seattle, where I'm based. And they were starting to hear from the Seattle office about some of the health impacts, some of the growing effects of the coronavirus back in February. They started kind of thinking about what is this going to mean to us? And they outlined three sort of core priorities that everything they do right now is designed around. And one of those basically is keeping ConnectWise itself healthy and solvent. Another is keeping ConnectWise's employees, or colleagues as they call them, healthy and productive. And the third, of course, is keeping ConnectWise partners healthy and solvent as well. And, Jason made no bones about it. Those three priorities are very important to the company, all three of them. But the number one of the three, the one that's sort of at the top of the stack, is essentially keeping ConnectWise in good financial shape. And the logic behind that thinking, basically, he said, is the exact same logic behind, that statement that you get before every flight you're on, where they say, if the oxygen masks come down, put your own on first, and then help your child or companion or whatever. I mean, they sort of feel like, look, if we're not around, we're not any good to anybody. So priority number one is let's make sure this business stays functional and financially okay. And then, of course, we got to look out for our employees and look out for partners as well. It was interesting, that part of the conversation. So we just spoke with Peter Melby, and he was kind of talking about, look, don't just stop paying your bills because you think you can get away with it. Don't go to a vendor and just see what you can get from them just because you think maybe you can get more now. It was a similar kind of message from ConnectWise. They absolutely want to hear from partners who are in need, but they are hearing from partners they feel like who, aren't necessarily in need. They're just kind of looking to see if they can take advantage of this situation right now. They said, look, if you can't pay your bill because your company is in trouble, call us, let us know, but call us in a spirit of, look, what can we work out, as opposed to, I'm not paying you this month. Let's work together on this. One last thing I'll sort of highlight here, as there was a little bit of conversation with Steve Cochran and Jason about the roadmap at ConnectWise, which I thought was interesting. So they're very cognizant of the fact that MSPs really have their hands full right now. And so they've done two things, basically. And one is they've actually delayed some new functionality in some of their products until later. They figure if it's not something that's going to be immediately useful and relevant right now, in this moment we're in right now, let's not bombard our partners with that stuff, and when they're already feeling, a lot of them, overwhelmed. So they're knocking some things back a little bit until it makes more sense to release it. And then they're accelerating some things, and they weren't too specific about what they were talking about, but within the next few weeks, apparently, there will be new functionality coming to a number of their different products that are relevant for remote management, remote security kinds of scenarios. And they're getting that functionality out to the market a little bit faster than they planned to do before, because their partners need that right now.
Yeah, very interesting. It's a long interview. They talk a lot about various things that they're doing. And I don't think anybody would argue with the sentiment of, you got to make sure that you survive first, because if you don't survive, you can't help anybody else survive. Mike, I know you're moving away from ConnectWise. What do you feel about what you've kind of heard here right now? Does that sound like the right approach? Do you think they should be doing something different? What do you think?
So it sounds like a good approach. I'll probably plead the fifth on some other things because I might not be in the best relationship with ConnectWise at the moment. So probably don't want to say the wrong thing. I will tell you, I am, and one aspect I'm staying with them is the Carvier to Continuum to ConnectWise partner. So I, keep getting thrown, and I'm very happy with that side of things and the Sentinel One and the SOC, and no matter what, I'm planning to keep that. And actually, just during about 3 weeks ago, just re-signed up a contract where I was originally month to month, but they reached out to me and said, "Would you be willing to sign a contract for the Continuum side of things?" Which, and they were rebranding that, and I said, "Absolutely," and I was very happy with that and re-signed during the COVID crisis. What I am looking to move away from, which is the RMM and the PSA, and I've been with them for a number of years. Just wasn't happy, and I will say they don't make it easy. So even during it seems like is their way to survive by just keeping everyone, even though they're trying to leave. Maybe, but other than that, I'll plead the fifth.
So, Rich, every vendor is being impacted in various ways. ConnectWise has their own event that they do in Orlando this year, right? That's coming up. What's happening with that?
Yeah. So they have, they do all sorts of live events, but there are two especially big conferences that they do. And one used to be known for, a long time, ConnectWise partners used to be known as Automation Nation. They rebranded that IT Nation Explorer, I think 2 years or so ago. That happens every year in June. And then there's the, it's now called the IT Nation Connect event, which happens every year, except last year when it was a little bit early, but normally it happens every November. We didn't really get into IT Nation Connect. I don't know if they're even thinking that far down the road. It's very difficult to be in the event business right now and make plans for November. Nobody really knows what the world is going to look like then. June is a little bit, easier to make some predictions about. They have not gotten to the point yet of deciding whether or not that IT Nation Explorer event in Orlando in June is going to be face-to-face or virtual. They said at some point relatively soon, within the next couple of weeks or so, they'll make a final call on that. And they said, look, it's going to be different from what partners are used to one way or the other. If it's an online event, obviously it just, won't have the same feel as an in-person event. And I gather, although again, they didn't get into details, but I gather that, they're thinking very much about, well, how could we responsibly do this as an in-person event? And you can just kind of imagine what a show would look like in June. It would be very different from what you're used to. And I mean, all the sort of, social distancing kind of practices that you would have to implement. And so I'm just guessing it would probably be a much smaller event and so on. So they're a few weeks away from deciding for sure, but they're thinking about that event, and I'm sure they're doing their best to think about future events further down the road too.
The one event I'm looking forward to see if she's claiming she's going to change the virtual events is Robin Robbins. She's doing her event, I think it's next week, and she says it's not going to be a Zoom, it's not going to be a standard webinar, it's going to change the way virtual events are. So I'm curious to see how she pulls that off, and if it's successful, can it really change it going forward?
Yeah, I've seen a little information about that event too, just within the last few days, and it's a very big, ambitious, interesting agenda. And I mean, if there's anyone out there who could pull this off, it's her. So yeah, I'm really kind of curious to see how that comes together too. But yeah, like you said, there's always the option to just take a live event and say, let's just turn it into a Zoom meeting. And they're thinking much bigger than that. She is, and we're thinking bigger than that at ChannelPro too.
Yeah, we're definitely coming up with some new concepts and ideas for our events, particularly the one that was scheduled in May, where that is going to be a virtual event, and we're working all that stuff out now behind the scenes, and hopefully it'll be it's more ambitious and cooler than a Zoom meeting. But maybe not quite as ambitious as a 4-day sumathon from Robin Robbins. She's got a much, I think, bigger team to work on that stuff than we do here. Well, that's good stuff. Thanks for going through those stories. And for those who want to read, there's a lot more, especially in this interview that Rich did with ConnectWise. So if you'd like to check that out, go to the show notes page for episode 143, or if you're watching on YouTube, open the description area, and we have links to all of these different articles and things we're talking about right there for you, so you can go to the site and check those out and get all of the details. We are going to take a break. When we come back, we are going to have a great interview with Mark Smith, founder of the host of the IoT Playbook podcast. Pardon me. And so we're going to go do that, and we will be right back. Hey, we got a special interview lined up for you today. Someone we've been trying to get on the show here for quite a while because, as you know here, if you listen to ChannelPro Weekly quite a bit, you know that IoT is certainly a big area of growth for MSPs and resellers out there. As more and more things hit the network, we need more and more tools and expertise to manage it. We actually have a sister website that's dedicated to the IoT industry as a resource and guide for ISPs and not ISPs, MSPs and VARs and integrators, called IoTPlaybook.com. One of the people working on that project with us and host of the IoT Playbook podcast is Mark Smith, and he joins us today. Hi, Mark.
Hey, how you doing? Thanks, Matt. And
good. Glad to finally have you on. I know we've been trying to get you on here for several months, actually, but it's a busy, crazy time, especially these days.
That's right. Yeah. So, well, I tell you, the whole IoT thing came up because, I used to speak at, the ChannelPro shows, still do. And my topics would vary depending on which MSP I was partnered with or which expert, right? I did a whole class with Carl Palachuk called the Cloud 5 Formula, right? And then I did one with Steve Ruckovitz and then with Eric Simpson, MSSP Quick Start. Well, it was one day I was sitting in the audience and watching one of your guests, Luis Alvarez, and he was talking all about his Canna business and how he's growing it. So I decided to follow up with an interview, and then he dropped the gold bomb. And he said, by the way, I'm really getting into this IoT thing, and I've come up with this IoT managed service, and I'm actually generating about $1 million in revenue. And I went, wait, what? Would you be willing to do a webinar and maybe a class with me called the IoT MSP Formula, whatever, which we did? And he said, yes, absolutely willing to do that. So I learned Lewis's story, and that sucked me into the IoT world because he's created this managed service that he's done now with 200 different clients. And it has really 3 tiers. The first level is just monitoring IoT devices. And the second one is real-time alerts, and he used that for banks. And then that third level, the big kahuna, is video management, combining video and AI and video management into a service. Anyway, we started doing that, and we thought, man, this deserves its own thing. And I remember Mike Siggins, the publisher, came to me and we started talking about, hey, let's do a podcast, IoT Playbook. So that's how we got it. That's how we moved from ChannelPro into IoT Playbook.
Yeah, and there's 24 episodes of that podcast currently available. Can you give us a little recap on maybe some of the guests interviews that you've had on?
Well, as a matter of fact, one of the earlier guests is sitting right here, Mike Bloomfield. And I remember talking to ASCII, and they said, oh, we got a guy, is Mike Bloomfield. And Mike talked all about his service, which is very unique in the MSP world of being able to serve business level security at a home level, and even do some of the what we normally would call the CE Pro stuff, home theaters and whatnot, plus also have a traditional MSP combined. So, by servicing home customers, he's doing a ton of IoT work, and we kind of geeked out a little bit on how to do some of that IoT managed services and stuff. So. And
what are some of the other guests you've had on as well?
So one of the most recent guests, so if you go to podcast.iotplaybook.com, even the most recent episode, and I don't know if you share your screens on this thing, but anyway, is with Kuykendall. So he was a cover, probably one of your last covers, and we got deep into what he does in IoT managed services. So with his clients, he's even doing all the AV work for mega churches. He does, even energy as a service for all these large facilities. We get into a big conversation about his ag clients and how he's dramatically improve the throughput of their cotton gins. Now you think cotton gins, that's like old school. Well, and that's what we found, the common element with what MSPs that get into IoT, and one of my guests even coined the thing that IoT actually means I own this, because it means you get into a line of business problem and you kind of stick with it. So, you know, which MSPs are going to know everything there is to know about a cotton gin? Well, Kuykendall does. Because he's doing that, he's increased their revenue substantially. And what IoT has done for a lot of my guests is it has increased their revenue per client by 10-fold. Now, that's not just a hyperbole, it literally is true. You were to talk to Luis Alvarez, you know, and another one of my frequent guests, one of his clients is the world's largest orchid grower. And he used to do all the typical MSP stuff, manage laptops and servers and their network. But then he got asked to bid on an RFP for something to manage their actual greenhouses. These guys have 65 football field sized greenhouses. He never touched the greenhouse before, but he got pulled into that. And now he's literally doing smart greenhouses, and it has increased his revenue for that client by 10x. And that's just one example of allowing IoT to get in, and then you start managing some of their line of business work.
So yeah, I mean, let's talk a little bit about that, because you have a concept. It comes up a lot in the podcast. It comes up just in conversations. There's this idea of being an IoT MSP. And so lots of people listening right now who are MSPs, they're hearing a lot about IoT. It probably feels pretty abstract to them for the most part. And they're wondering, well, you know, how should I work IoT into what I do? So, I mean, what is an IoT MSP from your perspective, and how different is it from what an MSP in our audience now is doing today?
Okay, so what happens in an IoT? So the MSP is the same, managed service provider. Okay, the IoT part is basically saying, well, what about all the devices that are on a person's network that aren't your traditional laptop server networking gear? Okay. Well, most of the people out there listening ignore those. And there's a good reason why they ignore them, because they use tools like ConnectWise, Automate, or, you know, or SolarWinds, or whatever. It scans the network. And when it finds an IoT device, it usually just puts up a question mark. Okay. And you know what? Most MSPs that are listening right now, they ignore those question marks. They go, well, hey, if my tool doesn't care, I don't care. Well, there was a circumstance where Lewis and Mike and all 24 of my guests went, wait, what are those question marks? And maybe I need to deal with those because they're on the network. They're not only a security problem, okay? And I have a whole thing with one of our favorite guys, you know, we deal all with IoT security, you know? But it's also a revenue opportunity, okay? So what am I talking about? When you use a device like Domotz, you start scanning the network and you find all kinds of devices that are on the network, your network, that you're not dealing with. The access control, the video surveillance cameras, right? And then I mentioned was Alvarez, all on the network is literally sensors that measure temperature, air temperature and humidity and the soil, you know, water in the soil and all these other things that he was previously ignoring. Well, he stopped ignoring it and it turned into a massive business opportunity. And I would say that if you use a tool like Avik or Domotz, you will find that the majority of devices on some of your clients' networks are actually non-traditional PC devices. So step one, you have to use a tool to open your eyes to the opportunity. Step two, it introduces a new business models, okay? It's very similar. It's the same exact evolution. We went from sort of break fix to MSP, right? A lot of the IoT companies were doing project-based stuff and they weren't using managed service, but an MSP has an advantage in that they can go in and create a monthly recurring revenue around monitoring and managing those devices into a new business model.
I just want to jump in really quick. So Mark, exactly in terms of security, right? Because, and a lot of people forget that. You take the traditional world, I got me and my wife, and I have 2 little kids. If you look at just laptops, mobile devices, tablets, I would have maybe 10 devices on my network. I use Domos for my house just to keep an eye on things. I have 128 IP addressable devices in my house. So, oh, sorry about that. 128 IP addressable devices. That is incredible. So, and that's 108 devices as an MSP we might have ignored and not have focused on. And these are all potential security points of entry for hackers. And right, you watch the ring, the nesting, everything that goes with it. Super important to do for that exact reason. And exactly right. ConnectWise gives you the little the arrow, the question mark, and what is that device? And most people just ignore it.
That's right. So if you're a security expert, or you purport to be to your clients, and by the way, even if you don't claim to be one, your clients expect you to be one, right? You have to secure their network. Well, they have all these devices on the network. So we had an episode 16 with Josh Lieberman where we went super deep into IoT security, and he happens to use a tool that we describe and even demo, if you watch the video part of that, a solution called Nodeware, where it literally scans all those things and then finds, it compares them. There's a database of firmware out there that will say this firmware is in compliance, meaning it's secure, but there's a bunch of stuff out there that's out of date. It's end of life. It's sitting there on their network. There are no patches for it anymore. You got to retire that and do it. But again, it's another opportunity. It allows you to then go, like in the past, you used to say, oh, I'm end of life on, Windows 7. I better upgrade them all to Windows 10. Well, guess what? There's end of life on a whole universe of devices out there that give you an opportunity to now bid on that job. And I can tell you, like in the case of like the smart greenhouses or all these potentially are massive projects with recurring revenue out there. Now, I got into this so much that I literally had started my own IoT managed service company called Clean Connect. And it's in the oil and gas space. And we're providing real-time methane leak detection and tank level monitoring for the oil and gas business. Well, as you know, the oil and gas business probably, a few days ago, oil went to what? Minus $35 a barrel. So they're reeling from like, how in the world can we be profitable when oil is so cheap? How can we do it? Well, now they're really super focused on getting efficient. And it turns out one of the number one costs is literally truck rolls. They have millions of miles of truck rolls out to the middle of nowhere to go look at something, and so what they need is a tool called RMM, Remote Monitoring and Management. Ever heard of that? Well, they need it for the oil and gas space, so that's what we got into. It's different. We're not looking at laptops and servers, although we have intelligent edge devices out there at the edge to process machine learning thing, but we literally have infrared cameras pointing at things to look for real-time methane leaks, which is a big deal. And the industry, there's regulations on there that will get fined up to $15,000 a day for, methane leaks. So we're helping them become more efficient, eliminating the truck rolls. And by the way, the number one safety violation in the oil and gas space is not on a pad. It's actually driving to and from the pad in a truck accident. So you eliminate the truck rolls. And so we've actually created there's a new emerging guy. They're not calling us as MSPs, but also we're training a new army of what we call digital roughnecks. So anyway, there's an opportunity in the oil and gas space, and there's lots and lots of opportunities if MSPs open their eyes to look beyond their traditional IT devices.
So I want to circle back quickly to something both you and Mike mentioned there, just for some folks in the audience, because you guys mentioned ConnectWise, you mentioned Auvik. I think most people listening know about those two products, but you also mentioned a product called Domotz, DOMOTZ, which is less of a household name right now. That's an RMM tool. It sort of started out in the video surveillance, physical security world. They've been kind of moving into IT more recently, but that product happens to be really, really good at monitoring, managing the stuff that shows up as a question mark in ConnectWise. That's sort of their bread and butter. That's their world. And so a lot of the people, you deal with, Mark, who have added IoT to their MSP practice are using that tool or something like it that is much more native to all these unconventional IT devices. So like you're saying, I mean, the entry point for anyone in the audience right now to IoT can be as easy as managing all of these other devices on the network. And especially if you're charging per device. I mean, like, if I remember right, Lewis literally doubled his revenue overnight because all of a sudden he had twice as many devices that he was managing. But you can then go beyond that, as you were saying, into some of these somewhat more sophisticated areas. And you mentioned smart greenhouses and so on. I mean, if you were to maybe steer people, based on the interviews you've done with the podcast, if you were to kind of steer people in some directions that are maybe a good next step after you start just managing the hardware, if you wanted to kind of take that next step, is that video surveillance or physical security, for example? Are there kind of low-hanging fruit opportunities that are maybe less ambitious than something like smart cities, for example?
Oh yeah. So for sure I would use a tool like Domos to go discover everything on the network, and you'll spot opportunities, right? And we even teach in this, if you go to freeiotclass.com, there's a webinar and a class that's offered at the end that teaches you how to create a monitoring service around there, okay? If you got banking clients, the real-time alerts also explained. But really, video surveillance was relatively a commodity, okay? But you take a video surveillance camera, you add AI machine model, and now you've got magic, where people are willing to pay you a lot of money to go solve certain problems. One of the problems that Lewis and I are working on right now is this whole idea we're all locked down, right? There's nobody in schools, okay? I'm surprised one of you haven't had kids run in, or something like that. But anyway, every Zoom
lock
meeting.
the door, Mark. They're
Okay.
banging, trying to get in.
The last 3 Zoom meetings I went in, some kids running in and saying, Dad, the first one was, where's my pink underwear, right? I mean, all kinds of interesting meetings. But at any rate, so reopening schools, like, how are you going to do it? How are you going to monitor temperature? And the nurses are freaking out because to literally sit there and every kid walking in, hit them in the forehead with a thermometer takes a long time, not very practical. So we're coming up with a camera AI solution that will be mounted on the school, and literally as people are walking in, it can check their temperature 3 per second, okay? And it then sets off an alert so that a nurse gets a little ring in their ear and they can see which one, and they can pull them aside very discreetly and say, hey, listen, is it okay if we check you out or something like that? And if they got a fever or whatever, whoop, have your mom pick you up and take you home, right? That way all the rest of the parents are not freaking out that, hey, my kid's going to be hanging around with someone who has COVID or whatever. So camera, AI, but it requires a wireless access point, a Domos unit to manage the cameras, and VPN, and a bunch of other stuff, all the stuff that fits in the domain of the MSP. But again, if you didn't have experience with camera and AI, you may miss that opportunity. And just read about it from some guys. Well, I could have done that. Well, yeah, you could have. And so we're actually going to put that whole solution together and then eventually build a channel around it to deliver it, because, hey, schools want to open, right? I even grabbed the URL reopenschool.com, and I'm going to do that kind of thing. We'll see if that's the deal, but that's just one of many, IoT opportunities. So really, I would pay attention to cameras. In my oil and gas one, it's infrared cameras. So they can speciate methane gas, right? Really expensive cameras from FLIR. But cameras plus AI software is magic.
So I guess one last question, because like even just talking about this solution you're working on with Lewis just kind of reminds me, and anytime I wind up in a conversation about IoT, I always encounter some idea or solution or concept that is just totally new to me. It's one of the things that makes that field so interesting right now, is it's just not like anything else that we normally talk about at ChannelPro. You've done 24 of these conversations now on the podcast. I mean, what's maybe the single most surprising insight thing you've learned about IoT that you just didn't really expect you would ever learn when you first started doing the podcast?
I think number one is that every industry is going through a digital transformation. Okay. And in fact, that's the broader name for all this stuff. You'll hear digital transformation. They talk about that name a lot when they're talking to the business folks who make these, they're looking at the business side of it. And people, they're involved in increasing revenue, decreasing costs, but IoT is a massive opportunity. Okay. Number two, I had a guest on, and we were talking about this. And he says, look, IoT, once someone makes that transition, it is the fastest path for an MSP to create their own IP. So think about what I just mentioned. I have two solutions right now. I could just be reselling somebody else's solution, but IoT and the associated software, I'm creating my own branded solution that now, instead of just being the channel partner, I'm actually looking for other channel partners, because there are other channel partners who will look and say, ooh, he figured something new out, solving a big problem. I want to resell that, right? So it is probably one of the fastest entries to creating your own IP. If you create your own IP in your company, you will increase the value of your MSP by at least tenfold. You do.
It's interesting that you say that, because it seems like if you're going to go into IoT, it's almost like you're going to, and if you go and you start trying to develop your own solutions, you're going to find this weird fork in the road where are you going MSP or are you kind of becoming a vendor? How do you manage that?
Well, there's two things. Number one, usually you have to, in order to attract partners who want to adopt you got to actually do it, right? There's no more credibility than actually figuring out the solution and doing it, right? So you got to be this MSP. Then you can attract other ones and say, hey, look, I figured it out. Here's how it all worked. I'm a real MSP. A lot more credibility than if I was just a guy saying, oh, I heard about some guy who did it, as opposed to I did it. Here's how it worked. Here's all the stuff we discovered. We paid the dumb tax so you don't have to, right? So that has a lot more weight in doing it. So yeah, you kind of have to jump in and figure it all out and do it. Then you have something to offer to somebody else. Okay. So yeah.
Very, very interesting. Well, I think we're out of time for today. Thank you so much for coming on and being with us and talking to us today about the IoT stuff. I know the website is iotplaybook.com. You can look at the IoT Playbook podcast at podcast.iotplaybook.com. Or you go to iotplaybook.com and there's links to different episodes right from there. I encourage everyone to go and check that out. For folks who want to connect with you, Mark, specifically, where can they find you?
They can find me actually at, a couple ways. Mark at ChannelProNetwork.com.
That would be the easy one. And are you on the LinkedIn and the Facebooks and the Twitters?
Oh, yeah. I got the LinkedIns and the Facebooks and all that stuff. Yeah, I'm pretty easy to... Well, actually, with a name like Mark Smith, I'm practically invisible. So, yeah. I mean, you search for Mark Smith and you might find a gazillion of them. But, yeah, anyway, check out Mark at ChannelProNetwork.com and that'll do it.
Awesome. Perfect. Well, thank you again so much for being here. We are going to take a quick break. When we come back, I've got a museum pick and a tech pick lined up for you today. A really good one. I'm excited about talking about this one, Rich. And Rich, of course, will go through what has happened in the past with our In Case You Missed It post, and he will pull out his crystal ball, gaze into it, and see if he can tell us what is going to happen in the immediate future to come. Stick around for that. We will be right back. Hey, welcome back to part 3 here at ChannelPro Weekly. We're going to wrap up the show. We're going to play 5 questions with Mike Bloomfield, which will certainly be a lot of fun. I've got a museum pick and a tech pick for you, and Rich, of course, will break down what has been and what will be. First, Mike, 5 questions is a game we're going to play with you. Kind of become a little staple here with some of our guests on ChannelPro Weekly. Rich and I, off the top of our heads, that's the big important part, is we don't write any of these down in advance. That is a guarantee. We will ask you 5 questions. It could be about anything and everything possible. Nothing to embarrass you or anything like that. But just to have a little fun and get to know you and see how you react to some crazy off-the-wall questions. Rich, I don't have one in my head at the moment, so hopefully you do. Question 1 goes to you.
Okay. And Mike, don't let the baseball cap in the background for those watching on video influence you. But this is like an either or, right? Like nobody says both. So
It's Yankees.
Yankees.
I knew as soon as you said the baseball cap in the background, I knew where you were going with that one. So it's funny before I moved to Arizona for a number of years. When I was in Arizona, I got huge into baseball, and obviously as a Yankee fan. Moved back from Arizona, stopped watching baseball, started my business, and I probably haven't been to a Yankee game probably 5 or 6 years. In Arizona, I was flying back to New York to come visit family and go in the game. So go figure. I would go to more games when I lived in Arizona than I do living in New York. But big Yankee fan, just the season needs to be a little shorter. And I guess we're getting that this year.
Yeah.
That you are. All right. Question 2, being from the Chicago area, growing up around here, there is a very, very particular way people from Chicago eat hot dogs. Very, very specific toppings that must be on it. That's why it's called a Chicago-style hot dog. Being from New York, how do you like your hot dogs?
Okay, so your hot dogs are not the right hot dog. Our hot dogs are better. They're supposed to come.
I will argue to the death, sir.
You're going to tell me your pizza's just as good too. And look, don't get me wrong. I like it. I like Lou Malnati, and I send it to myself from Goldbelly, but it's not New York pizza. But the way I do a hot dog, dirty water hot dog from a cart. I do 2 hot dogs. I like one with ketchup and the cooked onions on it. And then the second one I do with mustard and the sauerkraut. And I have to have a knish with it. The knish makes the hot dog. If I don't have a knish, I might as well not even eat the hot dogs.
Very interesting. So, of course, the proper way to eat a hot dog, I'm glad that you mentioned that, but of course the proper way is the Chicago-style hot dog. It's mustard, onions, relish, sport peppers, tomato, and pickle. That is absolutely, you basically drag it through the garden, and that is how a hot dog is supposed to be eaten.
How do you fit that in your mouth?
Very carefully. I didn't say it wasn't a messy hot dog, but they're definitely good that way. Rich, how do you eat your hot dogs? Just out of curiosity.
Pretty classic, mustard, relish guy. I'm not a big onion kind of guy. I probably don't want quite as much stuff on there as you're describing that. Yeah, you know what's driving me nuts, Mike, is I'm out here in Seattle, and there is not a knish to be found. It's like anywhere, and just good luck finding a knish in Seattle.
I'll have to find some dry ice and mail you some frozen knishes.
We'll work out an exchange. I'll get you something here you can't get there.
I don't really like oysters, right? Isn't that what Seattle's like? I was in Seattle for about a month. Previous life when I used to do red light and speed camera installation. So I was in Seattle, beautiful. But they're like, oh, everyone's known for fish. They're fish. I like fried fish. Little did I know you guys don't have fried shrimp, fried flounder. Everything's like very fresh, oysters. So I was a little disappointed, but people are like, no, we're healthy here. We're not like you. You go back east if you want fried foods.
That's awesome. Rich, question 3 to you.
Well, let's see. We can see Baby Yoda behind Mike there. I think I see Han Solo a little bit further back. So, favorite Star Wars character?
Ooh, that is a tough one. Favorite Star Wars character? I really got to think this one through. Who would be? I'm gonna go with probably Han. I think Han he's kind of plays that he's a hero, but at the same time, he's kind of that normal person. You kind of see that, and you watch him transition. Great love story, and people may not agree with me. I thought Solo was an amazing origin story, and a great action movie, and I enjoyed seeing it. So I'm gonna go Han.
Very cool. I'm gonna stay on the path of Star Wars with question 4, as I finally actually just watched the last one the other day with the kids. I have my own opinions on it. I'm not gonna go into what I think. Where do you want to see Star Wars go from here?
I want to see it look, I think the last 3 movies were excellent. The Mandalorian was probably one of the best TV shows of the year, and a great continuation of expanding the Star Wars universe. Obviously, I got the child joining me today. I want to see it. I'm glad the saga is over. I want to see them expand the universe like they've been planning to. And I really would love to see more of Boba Fett, right? Everyone loves Boba Fett. He was only in the movie for a few minutes, and you only saw him for a few minutes in, his father in the prequels. There was a book I read many, many years ago when I was a kid called Tales of the Bounty Hunters. And it was probably my favorite Star Wars book, and I don't think it's canon anymore, but I would love to see them expand on the whole Boba Fett, actual Boba Fett. And there's theories that he may show up in The Mandalorian. So who knows?
Interesting. All right, Rich, question 5. I'm going to give to you.
Okay, thank you. And this may or may not be a good segue into your museum pick this week, but Mike, your first computer.
So there is a picture of me being 1 year old with a Apple. I don't remember what model it was, but it was an Apple computer. You won't catch me dead now with an Apple computer, but back then, I wish I'll email it to you, but it's funny. It's a picture. My dad's holding me up, and I remember he used to have me play Microsoft, or I guess it wasn't Microsoft at that point. It was a flight simulator game, and I would try to take off, and I would always crash. But it was like 8-bit, and it was terrible, and like water, you would see just blue fall. But that was my first computer.
Awesome. Well, thank you for playing 5 questions. Cool stuff. And that question was a good segue in the museum pick. So, Mike, you may not know, unless you listen or watch some shows in the past, that I have an enormous collection of old stuff that I like to say it's a hobby and I collect. My wife says I have a disease and I just can't throw anything away. Have you been on hoarders? You know what? That probably is my future down the road. My wife will have me committed, and the Hoarder Show will be an episode featuring me. But as Rich knows, I've been in the process of cleaning out the graveyard, which is a portion of my house in the basement where a lot of my old stuff lives. And I found a gem that I forgot about, Rich. And in fact, it's my oldest ThinkPad. As people know, I have a pretty good collection of ThinkPads. I'm a big ThinkPad fan back to the IBM days. And I found this guy, and I completely forgot about it. So I'm going to hold it up to the camera for those watching on YouTube. If you're not on YouTube, go and you got to find a picture of this thing, because it is like a massively thick notebook. Look at this thing. This is like 5 modern day notebooks stacked on top of each other.
And that's when they probably had a lock, right? You had to actually lift open to raise everything.
Yeah. There's like the little switch on the side to open the lid.
Yep.
This thing is a monster. This is the IBM ThinkPad 755 CDV. I'm gonna hold it up here again so people can see how it's not on a dock here, folks. It's not a dock. This is actually how thick it is. It's a 10.4-inch LCD screen, very low resolution. I want to say 640 by 480, if I remember correctly. I could go and look that up. It might be a little higher because this one back in the day was I was right, 640 by 480. There you go. Active matrix color TFT screen. Great IBM Thinkpad keyboard. This thing still feels good today. Look at this keyboard. It's fantastic. This was one of the first that had a built-in CD drive, hence the CD name in the model number of the computer. Not many notebooks before this one had built-in CD drives. This is also interesting, and I didn't even know this. One of the few notebooks that ever had a dedicated and built-in video input. So this actually had a video capture device built right into the laptop, which was not a common feature back then, and actually isn't a common feature now. Usually that's not built in. Usually you always got to do add-on peripherals.
What type of input is it?
It's a proprietary one. So that's what these little dots here are on the side. And for those watching, I can hold it up there. I'm pretty sure that it's those 2 dots. And there's also some of these symbols on here I don't understand. There's also this other tray on the other side that has some stuff. But I think this is like the networking side. But I think it's these 2 proprietary connectors. And my guess is that there's like there's like a little proprietary thing you plugged in, and then it gave you like an RCA input or VGA or something like that. But I don't have those pieces, and I didn't really go tearing through the bag that I found this in to see if they're in there, but they probably are. So maybe I'll try to get a picture of that. Massive power button. And for those interested, this was powered by a 75 75, Mike, megahertz Intel Intel processor. This one probably had a 1.2 gigabyte hard drive. 1.2 gigs. That's huge.
That's big.
That's more space than anyone will ever need ever. Yeah, 1.2 gigs, built-in 14.4 modem, a removable 1.44 megabit floppy drive. It had the little side port there for like their expansion.
PCMCIA cards or whatever they were.
Yeah, for the PCMCIA cards. Very good. Yep, that's on there. Infrared transceiver, front and back, dual track point 3 module, 240 pin docking connector. Battery life of probably 20 minutes is my guess back in the day. And it could be, this one runs Windows 3.1, I believe, or 3.11 was what was on this one. But it was also available with OS2 Warp, Mike, if you remember OS2 Warp.
Yeah. It was free, wasn't it?
On IBM computers, it was. Yeah, you could get it as a free option.
Free license, yeah.
Yeah.
Does it still
PC
boot
DOS
up?
7 and 3.11 pre-installed, and OS2. This one probably had the select source, so it was probably selectable when you booted which one you wanted to go into. So yeah, did you ever have any kind of old beast? Look how thick that thing is. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah, look, I had to think, but what was it? The Tough Book, I think it was smaller than that years ago. Now, does it still boot up or is it dead?
You know what? That one, I forgot I even had it, so I didn't get a chance to plug it in. But generally speaking, I don't keep anything that doesn't work. So at some point in the past, when I threw it into the graveyard, I'm sure I did turn it on and verified that it works. So it probably does. I don't know what I would do with it, obviously, but it's there to add to my collection of old ThinkPads.
Well, they might need that in New Jersey. They were looking for COBOL programmers for the unemployment. You could probably run the unemployment system on that.
You probably could. That's a fun one.
What's the estimated weight on that?
Let me see. I did find an old spec sheet. And as with other ThinkPad models, the 755 CDV is a lightweight battery or AC operated computer. So Rich, it's lightweight. It's not lightweight. It is about 7 pounds with the battery pack. Which actually isn't all that bad.
It's actually terrible.
It's actually terrible. Oh, I love it. So anyway, that's my museum pick. The ThinkPad Monster, super thick. How thick was it? It was
thicker than a plasma TV.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, for sure. 8. No, that's not it. About 2 inches thick. Yeah, 2 inches thick. All the way around, baby. Put that thing in your bag. You could lift weights with that thing. That's why people back in the day, they had strong backs because they were lugging things around like that on their back all the time. So I also do a tech pick, Mike, every show, and I usually like to kind of play That Was Then, This Is Now. And clearly by the specs of this old ThinkPad, it was definitely designed for maybe media creators. There was also a feature on here where you could like somehow take the back of the lid off and work and like display an overhead projector through it somehow. Like you could lay it flat and then the overhead projector would shine light through and it would work. I didn't try to
like an arcade machine almost.
Yeah, kind of, yeah. So I didn't try to take it off because most likely I'll probably break it. But that was so. There's clearly a productivity kind of video machine. So I'm like, well, what would be a good one in the Lenovo lineup of ThinkPads today to do that? So I did pick one. I picked the Lenovo P43S. So this guy is their lightest mobile workstation, NVIDIA graphics, WQHD display, Intel, Intel Core processors, lots of RAM. Let me see if I can put a little picture of it up here on the screen. A productivity workhorse kind of computer for a modern day. There's a picture of it there. So not super thin, but certainly thinner than the 755 CDV and half the weight. So this would be, I think, kind of the future spiritual successor to the old one that I showed you there. So that's my tech pick. Not much to talk about other than say that's it. The P43 Lenovo mobile workstation. What do you think, Mike? How many are you going to order?
It's COVID time, maybe 2.
It's COVID time, maybe 2. I love it. So that's it. That's my museum pick, my tech pick. Rich, why don't you tell us what happened in the past, and then again, get your crystal ball out and tell us what you think is going to happen in the future. You got to put the funny hat on though.
Yeah. In terms of what happened in the past, a great way to find out about that is to visit channelpronetwork.com every Friday for our In Case You Missed It post written by our own James Gaskin. This week he's going to be talking about a whole bunch of on-prem products from SolarWinds now being available at subscription prices, which is interesting. A new referral program for 8x8 partners, a strategic unified communications partnership between Intermedia and NEC, and a story that pulls together a number of different examples of the crazy things that people are doing as they go increasingly nuts being confined inside their homes, including somebody who in Russia who ran a 62-mile marathon course in circles around his bed. And that's not even the only thing that we've got going on there. Now, in terms of what is happening next week, a lot of that is still under embargo. Can't really talk about that. But I can say that a conference that probably would have happened in person under different circumstances. Tech Data's annual Endpoint Solutions Conference is taking place next week. It's going to be a virtual event, obviously. I'm going to try to squeeze in some virtual attendance and see if I can get some interview time with the person who runs their endpoint solution strategy over there. So that is coming up next week. It's something to watch out for. Awesome.
We will keep an eye out for that. Well, that is going to wrap up episode 143. I want to give a big thanks to our guest host, Mr. Mike Bloomfield, President Geek of Tekie Geek. Thanks for being on.
Thank you for having me. And please remember, my hot dog is the right one.
Rich, I think we might have a show title.
I think so.
Mike, for anyone who wants to learn about your business, find you on the socials, connect with you, how can they do that?
Yeah, it's Mike5555 at AOL.com. No, I'm just kidding. So it's Mike at TekieGeek.com. That's Mike at TekieGeek.com, or you can find me on Facebook.
Beautiful. Well, thanks again for being on. I hope we get you back on again. It was a lot of fun.
I hope so.
Great. So for those who want to subscribe to ChannelPro Weekly, that's what we recommend you do. Go to iTunes, go to Google Play Podcasts, go to Spotify, go to Stitcher, go to wherever you get your podcasts, and hit that subscribe button. So that way, each and every week, as new episodes get added online, they can just magically show up on your device or computer, whatever you're using, so you can listen in on the plane, train. Not that you're doing a lot of those these days, but who knows? You're going to be doing yard work outside and doing the dishes, hanging out, whatever. You can put the headphones on and listen in. If you'd like to watch, we are on YouTube. You can subscribe there. Make sure you hit the bell for new episode notifications, and then you're covered. Do both. That way you can watch or listen, depending on your mood that particular day. The website's channelpronetwork.com. Go there each and every day. We have news stories, resources, white papers, downloads, hitting that website each and every day. It is essential for you as an MSP or business VAR integrator to be abreast on what's happening there. And we have all kinds of great information right now that's going to help you survive this crazy, crazy time that we're in. We're also on Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, all the social networks. Just search ChannelPro Network. You'll for sure find us. And Rich, if people want to follow you on the Twitters, what are you?
At Rich Free.
I'm at Matt Whitlock if you want to follow me on Twitter. And that is going to wrap it up. So thanks again to Mike and all of our guests today, Peter Melby and Mark Smith. We will see you all in episode 144 next week.